Why this? Because I want to create the largest fragmented packet possible. So I sent the last packet, which is now the highest fragment object possible because it's divided by 8 and can only be special number range. So this is the highest fragment object possible. Say it's the last fragment and put the maximum amount of data in the packet that I can. When this packet is received by the target, it is reassembled to make a full packet out of these fragments. And this looks like that. You have the IPV6 header, and you have the data which is reassembled. And the maximum packet size in IPV6 is 64 kilobytes. But look what we're able to do. It's nearly 67 kilobytes, or nearly 3 kilobytes more, or 2 kilobytes more, than should be possible, or should be expected. So, who would be surprised by that? So this is the Avira personal firewall. And actually, I was not looking for this bug. At that time, I just happened to use it on my system. I know it was a mistake, because when I got several blue screens, I couldn't figure out why. Of course, I was doing several things at once, and until I figured out, okay, it's always blue screening if I do this. And that's why I found that out. This was fixed in the beginning of October with Avira Personal Firewall 2013. So if you're still using 2012, the patch should be out about now. Should be out already, or should be out in the next weeks. So for the 2012 edition, they think it's way longer to patch the issue. So there is one where people might be surprised about fragmented packets. Other personal firewalls might be affected as well. I didn't check for that bug on any personal firewall. It just happened while I was playing with packets that my own system was affected. Yeah? So more personal firewalls might be affected with the bug. Then, fragmentation surprises on firewalls. This is a 6 sidewall firewall. And again, I was not looking for that bug. I bought a 6 firewall simply because I wanted to have an easy way to do a VPN gateway to the server on the internet. That's actually why I bought this thing. And it didn't work, so I had to send it back afterwards. Crap. Yeah. So, what I found just by accident was the following. If the firewall allows to connect to an internal service, so it has an allow rule to connect to the server on a special port, all ports doesn't matter. That's the port 22 for remote SSH for the machine, remote administration of the machine. And now the administrator of the company sees, oh, this is not good. This is an attacker who's now logged in onto the machine. So he kills the connection and pulls a deny rule in here. So that when the attacker tries to reconnect to the machine, he is blocked by the firewall, so he can't log in anymore. Now you might be surprised what happens if you send the same packet. Well, the only thing you do is you put a fragmentation header before that. That's the only thing you change. This packet is allowed through. Although you have a rule saying, no, this is not allowed through. You send it as a fragment, it's allowed through. And the funny thing about that is they don't consider this a bug. Because what they're saying is, yeah, if it's fragmented, it must belong to an established connection. An established connection could hit a rule which we had in history. So if in history, in the last hour, in the last day, we had a rule which allowed something, and we have something which they think belongs to an established connection, they look if it fits one of the rules and allow it to pass through. Which is completely nonsense, because it's not an established packet TCP SYN. That's I creating a new connection. And so they're not getting it. Yeah, stuff like that. Another fragmentation surprise, this is German firewall vendor. Here it comes to me again, I'll tell you. Yeah. It's a German firewall vendor, it's a German firewall, and I was not testing this device, actually I was testing a device behind that firewall for a customer. So do protocol implementation checks and stuff like that. And this just happened to be the innocent bystander. So what I did, I sent something like fragmented packets, but leaving big holes in between. So I sent a fragment IDA, 0, and send a second packet with this representation and the offset of 20,000, and a third fragment with this identification and offset of 60,000. And did this for many different fragmentation IDs. Well, what happened? This died. 100% CPU, 100% RAM usage. It was just that you just couldn't pull the plug and put it back in. This is actually stuff which is known for IPv4 for many, many years, so-called teardrop attacks and stuff like that. But with IPv6, they think they don't need to learn from history. And this is another firewall vendor. I have one more. I'll show you the next slide before I want to talk about different topics and show you the next issue which is similar. And this is router alert matching. This is something where every hacker who reads this backspace, oh, this is so cool. It's like that. It's a hop-by-hop extension header. A hop-by-hop extension headers in the standard means that every router on the path must, if the header is present, inspect this header and look for the options inside. So it must process this header. This already sounds pretty cool. So if you can put one packet on the path through the internet, and every router on the path must look at this extension header, and you somehow find the bug that you can trigger by that, you just send one packet on traveling through the internet, and you hit all the boxes in between. For me as a hacker, it sounds great. But it's even better. There is a special option in there, in the hop-by-hop extension, which is called router alert option. Router alert option says, yeah, not only is this extension header is important, also the upper layer protocol is essential for you, so you should inspect that. So for example, there is option for multicast discovery, which means on top there is some ICP packet, type, and data, and you should inspect it. And yes, the router on the path does exactly that. He looks at the upper layer protocol, looks what's there, and tries to process the data while you're sending a packet across the internet. Every router on the path. For me, this sounds perfect. For denial of service, for example. So that was actually one of the first things I tried out when I went on the internet. Why this was what I found out there was so cool, I'll show you in the next slide. First, I'll show you another vulnerability, and then I'll show you once this vulnerability is fixed, what the future holds for you. Okay, this is a Cisco router. And this Cisco router has ACLs which prevents it for receiving any kind of packet. So if you ping the packet, the ACL says, no, mister, I won't accept any one of your packets. So what we do, we send a ping to a destination which is behind the Cisco router. Somewhere behind, directly behind, far behind, it doesn't matter, it just needs to be behind the router. And we do that with this hop-by-hop extension header with the router alert flag. What happens is that the Cisco is fully processing the packet and sending us a reply, bypassing the ACL. This only works for ICP packets. And they're currently fixing this issue. And I really, really, really want this issue fixed because of this. What I found out when I was experimenting with this router alert flag, I expected that the latency to remote system would get very, very, very low, very, very high. So, because the CPU has to process every packet, every CPU on every router on the path has to examine the packet, blah, blah. So, CPU load would rise on the routers, and so the packet latency would grow higher and higher, and by that we would have denial of service. However, what I found out was the complete opposite. What I experienced were that the latency were cut not only by half, but by 1,000%. So, for example, I searched for a host in Japan because it's, for me, that's the farthest away undersea cables and whatsoever. And I had a ping answer time from 1 second, 700 milliseconds. So 1.7 seconds it took the ping reply to reach me. When I used this router alert feature, it dropped down to 250 milliseconds. So they became 5 times faster rather than what I expected it would take even slower. No, it was getting way faster. So I checked it out with several other servers in the world. Some friends of mine already had IPv6 back then, so I told them, please hold a sniffer on your machine and I'll ping it and we'll see that really this packet reached you, and when your system is sending the reply, and yes, that was the case. But then, 1 year ago, Cisco implemented this bug. And since then, I can't use my hidden speed technique anymore. So that's why I urge Cisco so much to please fix this bug. Because low latency is something really, really nice if you want to work on it. That was the part of implementation problems of vendors. Now, this might be the clueless admin in a company who has to deploy IPv6. Or maybe it is. So what could probably go wrong? I wanted to know that, so what I did, I selected the 2,500 companies in the world who have already, the largest one who have already deployed IPv6. And for every one of these 2,500 domains, I did domain name guessing. So I looked for ftp.company.com, www.company.com, mail.company.com, and so on and so on. A list of over 3,000 entries. And every time I did a lookup for this address, I looked if I get an IPv4 and IPv6 address back. If I did that, so if both IPv4 and IPv6 address came back for the lookup, I saved these addresses away in a file. So I collected lots of servers with both IPv4 and IPv6 connectivity. What I did next was, I scanned these systems. I scanned them for if I can access remote administration ports to them. So Telnet, FTP, remote desktop protocol, VNC, SSH, etc., etc. And then I compared the numbers. What I can access on IPv4 on these servers, and for the same services, or for the same companies on IPv6 to see, is there a difference? And surprisingly, yes, there is. So, SSH alone, you see on 5% on IPv6 is connectable, on IPv4 is 3% connectable. So in server environments, you usually have a firewall in front. So being able to connect to such a service, I mean, look at IPv4 for example, VNC or remote desktop protocol. 0.1%. So one of every 1,000 server on IPv4 was connectable. Now that's the number you would expect. Here, it's 5 to 6 times higher on IPv6. There are two reasons for that. The first reason is that administrators don't see IPv6 as much of a risk. So if there are no hackers on IPv6, who could attack me? So they tend to do less secure configurations here. The second problem is, they already have a firewall, IPv4 based, and if you're a fuck, it doesn't support IPv6. I have to upgrade the firewall, I have to buy a new one, and you have to do the tender for the new hardware, blah, 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 get it deployed, you get a budget for that, it takes a long, long time. But the management says you must do IPv6 now. So that's the other reason why there's a lot of networks now with IPv4 firewalls that have no IPv6 protection. So, as the next step, because I went, okay, these are companies. How about the ISPs? So what I did for all the servers I found, I also did a trace route to these servers and collected every address of the routers of the path for IPv4 and IPv6. And here I did exactly the same thing. How many routers on the path answer to Telnet, to SSH, and these are the numbers. So 60-70% of all routers on the internet are connectable on SSH port. Or even, and that was the most frightening one, Telnet. Come on, 8% of all routers on IPv6 networks are connectable on Telnet. They are so advanced, they have IPv6 capabilities, but you can't disable Telnet on them? Come on. I mean, I don't know what these administrators are smoking. Should be good. Yeah, and you see the number for IPv4. Yeah, the most striking one, as you see, is SSH. Of course, lots of the routers today come with Telnet disabled. So here they forget to disable that. But with SSH, you Here they can. Just put an ACL on the interface, done. They're not doing that. So, who in the room does penetration testing? Internally or as a consultancy service? Anyone? Okay, two. Or thank you or not thank you, because if no one raised their hand, I could just skip the next slides. This way, I leave questions for you too. Thank you. Okay, in IPv6, there is very, very little notice for how do you penetration test IPv6. The main problem is finding the targets. Because you have so many addresses in IPv6, and every single subnet in IPv6 is 4 billion times the whole internet, you can't just do a live scan like you can do in IPv4. The live scanning phase in IPv4 is a piece of cake. It takes you a few minutes and you know all the systems that are live in a remote network. In IPv6, this is not possible. If you would put a live scanning technique on IPv6, it would take several hundred years. So this is not feasible. So every work you do in IPv6, if you want to do pandas, is actually on finding the targets, because that's the crucial and the difficult stuff. Once you have found the targets, then it's the same like on IPv4. They do port scanning, fingerprinting the services, attacking the service, looking for weak accounts, misconfigurations, and so on, because that is the same. But the different part, and the way harder part in IPv6 is actually finding the targets. And this section shows you how to find those targets. And this section would not be possible without the help of the RIPE NCC. RIPE is the registration authority for everything internet in Europe. You have the same here in South America, which is called LATNIC. The Americans have ARIN and so on. So this is the registration authority for Europe. And every technique I will now show you to get information on remote systems, work on them, and you can take them as an example. So all the tools I show you, the output I show you, everything is real, and they still work, and they know about that. So this is nothing like a 0-day surprise to them. No, they know about that, and they know what to fix that, which is great for you if you want to learn and play. So that's why thank you, Ryan, for helping hackers to grow. The first thing in IPv6 is you must know what networks are they actually using. There are two things you can do. First, you have to register a network. Registering a network, however, all the companies I've seen, they say, oh yeah, we have to expect a large growth of our business for the next 100 years, so we should rather get so large network that is unbelievably large, but we might use it in the future. So they take a network which is very, very large. But they're not using that large network. They're just using a small portion of that network. So by just looking up in the registry what they have registered for IPv6 doesn't help you at all, because that address space is way too large. What you want to know is what are they actually using from that large address space. And for that, BGP is your friend. So the only thing you know is for a company, and here we use RIPE NCC, we ask for the autonomous system number. What is that? Every large company not only has one internet connection, but two internet connections for failsafe. If you have two internet connections, you need to speak a routing protocol, because you need to get traffic to the internet. If one fails down, you must still go the other way, otherwise you will not have no failover on the internet. So that's what BGP is for. Every entity which is part of this routing network gets a number, an identifier. This identifier is called autonomous system number. And what we do, we just look up which autonomous system number is that target that company using. RIPE has more than one actually. Of course, they have different kinds of centers. Also, they are on one location, but they have different centers. So they have these four autonomous system numbers. With these numbers, I can dump on several central services every information out of them, which is what IPv6 address spaces are being routed to these autonomous system numbers. Everything which is announced there by the target, by RIPE NCC, I know is being handled there. So this is the perfect start to find out what is the target actually using. So entity they're not announcing any IPv6 connectivity. Here we have 2. And for the last one, it's about. As you can see, we always have /48 addresses, which is a lot. It's like a class A network on IPv4. And as you can see, they have 1, 2, many, so around 20 class A networks, which are all routed to the right HCC. Now the problem is the class A network gives you 64 kilobytes of possible networks. But the problem is still that every single network is 4 billion times the whole internet in size of possible host entries in each network. So still, we know now what kind of network ranges they're using, but it's still taking 100 years to scan this address space. So this is just the start. So now we will deploy several techniques. The first is, let's do a fast scan. I did a lot of IPv6 network scanning, a lot. So really, over the last years, many million hosts. And actually, I'm the only one who has ever reported, hey, I've seen someone scanning me. Has anybody seen that as well? That was always me. So I found out that there's one IPv6 address, host port address, which is used most often. You always see this in IPv4 network. IPv4 is the .1. Whatever the network address is, .1 is usually the default gateway. The same as in IPv6, that administrators usually configure the 1, the colon 1, and it's written in IPv6. This is usually the default gateway. And if there are more gateways or more routers, they have sometimes also 0, the 2, the 3, the 4, etc., etc. And just statistically, on every network where a system exists, on 63% also the colon 1 is reachable, so pingable. And if you scan for 0, 1, and 2, 79%. Where a network is active, these are pingable addresses. So if we, for example, just scan for these 3 addresses for every network, this is feasible. This is something we can actually really scan. This can be done in a very limited amount of time. So I did that here for one of these /48 networks. Had in the previous examples. So there's a tool in my package also to remote network scanning. You just specify the network range, and you can specify from 2 values, which is the /48 network plus on the host part is 0, the 1, and the 2. And then every system which is alive here and sends a ping reply back, you get a reply. And as you can see, this just takes 30 seconds per /48 network. You want to tell me something? They try to squeeze the presentations all more together. You will not have a break in between. They're all back-to-back presentations now. And every presentation has to be something like 15 minutes short. Okay, so I'll try to wrap it up fast. So just 30 seconds for full /48 networks. As I said, only 79% of the networks we find that are really there, but that's already very good. So if you do this for all networks, you find a lot of these networks alive. The next thing we can do is a reverse DNS enumeration. This is a special technique which works in a way how DNS is designed and implemented. So this is the reverse lookup of the part of the reverse lookup of an IPv6 address. Now, if you ask for the next entry, the next 4 bits of the IPv6 address, if that exists, you get no error because there is still something underneath. If it doesn't exist, you get an exclamation error. So, if you know how DNS works, this makes sense to you. Otherwise, it might be, as we say in Germany, böhmische Dörfer, which makes no sense to you at all. So, if you do this for the whole IPv6 address space of the target, you get to the full entries on reverse lookup of an IPv6 address to its domain name in a very very, very short time. So in just 1-2 minutes, you can scan the whole network address range. So this is again an example of how this looks like on write. And maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes for all the network address ranges. So this is again very, very fast. Then also have to do the other part. So as IPv6 addresses are very long and complicated, you can't remember them, they all must be in the DNS to be manageable. So the administrator can access even clients, so they all must be in the DNS. So the goal is to get everything out of the DNS that we can. For the hostname to IPv6 address part, you have 3 techniques. You can do a zone transfer, you can do DNSSEC walking, and DNS root forcing. If DNS zone transfers work, which rarely do, but sometimes they do, and thank you, right, they do. This is perfect because every information you need is in it. Done. You don't need to do anything else on the DNS part before everything is in there. If not, you should next try DNSSEC walking. If you use DNSSEC, NSEC or NSEC3 doesn't matter, also NSEC3 has vulnerabilities, you can walk the DNS names. You just tell them, please walk it, and if they have DNSSEC enabled, you can just walk the whole domain. And again, you get the full entries that are in the DNS system for that domain. If this is also not working, the last resort is just brute forcing the names. So what the patches do, you brute force DNS names, host names. So for write.net, you ask for access, address, blah, 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 large word list of possible host names, and everyone which is valid is split it out. There's also a tool for that in the toolkit, of course. Yeah. Now we come to the part where we put it all together. So every IPv6 address space or address we found from the DNS, from the network scanning, we all put this together in one input file. We have various options here. The most important one is actually the M, the D. In a previous talk, I showed, among other things, a statistic on IPv6 host addresses, how they're allocated statistically. So to prove that not everything is random, and also there is a very, very large address space for the local host addresses. They are predictable because people use common addresses. And this uses the research findings from that. Yeah, and so if you scan everything, you see I scanned over 500,000 machine addresses and found over 670 systems alive over the internet answering my packets. Something which should have, with all these large network addresses, taken something like 500 years. And done very fast. It will not be the complete view. So there might be over 700 systems. Because in IPv6, if someone didn't put that system in the DNS, or you missed the network because you had packet lock or something like that, you will always not find everything, but you will find 90%. And that's already more you can hope for in IPv6. So, you can also build nice maps with that. To come to the wrap up, the conclusion, as I already showed yesterday, IPv6 is not where it should be. We have to deploy IPv6 now and next year. But the state where it's in, it's immature, and it's not where it should be, so we can deploy it securely. But we don't have a choice. So, good. Thank you.